Have you ever wondered why we climb mountains or, spend years learning a really difficult instrument? It's kind of strange, right? In a world that's all about finding the easiest way to do things, we seem to have this deep, powerful pull towards doing things the hard way. Well, today, we're going to figure out exactly why.
Okay, so here's the central puzzle. Our brains are, for all intents and purposes, designed to be lazy. They're wired to conserve energy whenever possible. And yet, we sign up for things like grueling marathons, or we pour thousands of hours into mastering a skill like playing the violin. Why would we actively seek out difficulty when every instinct we have is screaming for us to just take it easy? It really doesn't seem to make any sense.
And that's exactly what we're going to dig into. We're going to trace this strange drive all the way back to its evolutionary roots, and then we'll pop the hood and look at the actual brain chemistry that makes a tough challenge feel good. To really get a grip on this, we have to go way back in time. See, the answer isn't really in our modern lives. It's literally etched into the survival code of our most ancient ancestors.
For early humans, life was just one high-stakes puzzle after another. Think about it. Hunting a massive animal wasn't just about being strong. It was about strategy, about teamwork, about outthinking your environment. Every single day brought a new, complex problem to solve, and if you couldn't solve it, you probably didn't survive. This constant pressure to adapt and get smarter is what literally built the amazing human brain we have today.
And this leads to something we can call the ancestral echo. You know that little jolt of satisfaction you get from finally solving a tricky puzzle or figuring out a tough problem? That's not just some random feeling. It's a direct echo of the primal reward our ancestors felt when they found food or built a safe shelter. Your brain is giving you the same chemical pat on the back that it gave them for staying alive.
Okay, so our evolutionary past helps explain the why we're drawn to challenge. But what about the how? What is actually going on inside our heads that turns struggle into something satisfying? Well, this is where we get into the fascinating chemistry of effort.
And it all kicks off with a chemical I'm sure you've heard of, dopamine. But here's the thing, there's a huge misconception about it. We all tend to think of it as the happiness chemical, but it's much more accurate to call it the motivation chemical. See, dopamine isn't really about the pleasure you feel after you've won. It's the craving, the drive, the get up and go that makes you pursue the goal in the first place.
And this is where it gets really cool, because it creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop. You don't just get one big reward at the very end. Nope. Your brain gives you these small, consistent hits of dopamine for every little bit of progress you make, every small bug you fix in your code, every single guitar chord you finally nail. Each of those tiny victories is like a chemical yes from your brain that reinforces the effort and makes you want to keep going.
Now, when this dopamine loop is firing on all cylinders, it can lead you to the ultimate reward of focused effort, what we call the flow state. I'm sure you know this feeling. It's when you're in the zone, so completely absorbed in what you're doing that the entire world just melts away. Time disappears, your own sense of self kind of fades, and there's only you and the task. It's incredible.
But here's the catch. You can't just flip a switch and enter a flow state. It needs a very specific set of conditions. The challenge has to hit this perfect sweet spot. It's got to be hard enough to demand your complete attention, but not so ridiculously hard that you just get frustrated and give up. It's that perfect match between the challenge and your skill level. And in a way, the difficulty itself is what makes it possible. By filtering out all the noise and proving that the real joy is found in the process, in the struggle itself.
But these rewards, they're not just temporary chemical highs that fade away. They actually create lasting change. Every single time we push through something difficult, we are literally upgrading our own psychological hardware. We're not just doing something, we are becoming someone new.
And this brings us to a really important idea called self-efficacy. All it really means is your belief in your own ability to get things done. I love this analogy. Think of it like a bank account. Every challenge you overcome, big or small, is like making a deposit into your self-efficacy account. Over time, those deposits build up, creating this really strong belief in yourself that lets you take on even bigger challenges down the road. And what happens is your brain starts to adopt this really simple but incredibly powerful logic. It's this internal narrative that says, hey, I did a hard thing before, so that must mean I can do hard things again. It's not just a fuzzy feeling. It's you building a body of evidence for your own competence, and that changes everything.
This idea is at the absolute heart of what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. How you see a challenge really is everything. If you have a fixed mindset, you see a hard task as a threat, a test that could expose your limits. But if you have a growth mindset, that exact same task becomes an opportunity. It's a chance to learn, to grow, and to actually become smarter. So look at the payoff here. When you lean into difficulty, you're building so much more than just a finished project. You're building resilience, so you can bounce forward from setbacks. You're forging grit, which is the fuel for any long-term goal. You're gaining real-world skills and competence. And all of that comes together to build this deep, authentic confidence that you can handle what's coming next.
Now, this all sounds amazing, right? But we got to be honest about the flip side. There is a very, very thin line between a challenge that helps you grow and one that just completely burns you out. So the question is, how do we find that sweet spot? How do we engage with difficulty in a healthy way?
Okay, so first things first, we have to understand that not all stress is created equal. There's something called eustress, which is basically good stress. That's that motivating, energizing pressure you feel before a big presentation you know you're ready for. But then there's distress, and that's the bad stuff. It's that debilitating, exhausting feeling of being totally overwhelmed. One sharpens your focus, the other just leads to burnout.
So what's the magic ingredient that turns a challenge from good stress into bad stress? What research shows it really boils down to two key things: your perception of control and your feeling of support. The exact same tough project can feel like an exciting mountain to climb if you have the freedom to make choices and know that people have your back. But it feels like a crushing weight if you feel powerless and totally alone.
So, how can you stay on the healthy side of challenge? Here's a little toolkit. First, learn to embrace that feeling of slight discomfort. That's where growth happens. Second, take those huge, overwhelming goals and break them down into tiny, manageable steps. This keeps that dopamine loop going. Third, and this is a big one, reframe failure. It's not a final verdict. It's just data you can use for your next try. And finally, always connect the hard work back to your why. A sense of purpose is the ultimate fuel.
So, when you put it all together, you start to see that our attraction to difficulty isn't some weird flaw in our wiring, it's actually the whole point. It's the core mechanism of how we grow. Because the real prize isn't just achieving the goal. It's not the view from the summit. It's about who you have to become to get there. By taking on things that are hard, we build skills, we forge real confidence, and we discover a strength inside ourselves that we never even knew we had. So I guess I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. What hard thing is out there just waiting for you to try it? What opportunity for growth is waiting for your courageous engagement?